And we are live. First episode of season 2.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe it. I feel like we've been gone so much longer than I know we have. But it felt like a long time.
It has this, it seems like it's been half of a year. In fact, it took me a while to figure out, it's like, oh, how do I launch StreamYard? What buttons do I push here? Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, and I've been head down just redoing my equipment, my setup too. So, on that front, I felt good. But exactly to your point, and I try to be prepared because, but I got on this morning. I'm like, now, what do I have to hook up?
Well, I am super excited for season 2. What are we talking about today, by the way?
We are going to talk about the skill, and I want to emphasize this, the skill of saying no. And in my experience, I don't know, and Cliff, you and I have talked about this in different ways, different parts of our conversations together, but this ability to say no, I think is something that we sort of, as I've thought about it and as I was thinking about this episode, that we think that we should just naturally be able to do it on some level. And it's a skill like any other skill we have to learn in life. If we want to have a life of wisdom and a life of well-being, it's like anything else that we need to learn to do. So I wanted to talk about it today. And most people, and I don't know how true this is for you, but most people that I talk to and with myself, I've had to learn it over time, struggle with saying no. We could say it another way, struggle with having boundaries. But I think sort of the actionable step is being able to say no. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
I love that.
And that it's a skill.
So what I want to share is that today, this is one of those areas where I feel like I've mastered the skill of saying no. Now, whether or not that's the Dunning-Kruger effect in coming into play here, because there are times where it's like, okay, I thought that I've mastered that one, and yet it's like I didn't realize how ignorant I was to some of the complexities of this thing.
Yes.
Yet I have much evidence to support that I am an expert in the art and skill of saying no, only as a result of learning the consequences of not saying no.
Yes.
And for me, I no longer have a gallbladder as a result of not saying no. I have had countless months and years of putting my family through a lot of really extremely challenging times financially as a result of my inability to say no. And also just a lot of undue stress, fear, anxiety, overwhelm, burnout from saying no so many different times within my life that at this point, once I learned that the solution was actually learning how to say no and that it's okay, I'll never go back to giving up my ability to say no without any reservation. Well, at least I believe that I don't think that I ever will.
Yeah, and I would say my experience of you, that is absolutely true. I do think that you are masterful at saying no and having the clarity, which is the other whole point, being able to say no. And this is another part we're going to talk about on the show, especially before you say yes. So this is nuanced, but we are going to get to it in the show because you may at first think it's a yes, and you may actually really know that you have a yes. But I'm going to advise anyone that I work with to say no first, because you'll lose your gallbladder. And and that's why you need to learn to say no.
Welcome to Life, the ultimate choose-your-own adventure game with hosts Cliff Ravenscraft and Daphne Scott. Join this dynamic duo as they explore the profound concept of life as a thrilling adventure, blending ancient wisdom and modern psychology. Embrace the joy of living with presence, creativity, and playfulness. It's time to navigate the game of life together. Are you ready to play? Let the adventure begin.
Navigate. I am ready to navigate the adventure.
And I am ready with creativity and playfulness.
I love it.
Two words that stuck out today.
So, Daphne, why this topic for season 2? And by the way, welcome to season 2.
Yeah, season 2.
We got renewed.
We did. And I love that we're doing we got picked up for another season because we decided.
There's a whole mess. Oh, here you go. We should do an episode sometime on why it's important to choose yourself.
You know what? Let's do it. Let's make that the next one.
All right. There we go.
Yeah, choose yourself. Well, and there is a lot around. Well, let's do this first, because this actually is where I'll get to how this topic came up. There's always something, by the way, in my life, probably, I say always, but probably something in my life that drives the topic of what we talk about. Just, and probably true for both of us and the content that we create and things that we do. Nevertheless, let's talk about the word choose for a second.
Okay.
To kick off season 2. And I think this is a key. I mean, we are choosing ourselves. We are choosing to do this show. We are choosing. And I think, there's working with the stuff of life as it arises, which it will. I listened to your episode, and I think this is on the Train with Cliff audio journal, I think, where you talked about your roof leaking and your iPhone
Yep.
dying, which I'm giggling at that, not because I think it's funny that you've had your own trials, laughing at your misery. Well, but what I'm giggling about is that it wasn't miserable for you.
Right. And so for those who...
Speaking of navigating.
Yeah. So for those who are unfamiliar with the Train with Cliff audio journal, which you can find at trainwithcliff.com, by the way.
Yes, you can.
It is a private behind the scenes journal of what's going on in the life of an entrepreneur who is incredibly overly sharing all of the transparent, authentic details of one's life. Oversharer. But here's the situation I had in one morning. I am getting ready to go into the gym. I get a text from my wife and she says, hey, just want to let you know, there is water leaking from the ceiling of our bedroom onto the bed. And I'm like, wonderful.
Great.
That was...
We have a water bed.
Yeah. We have a water bed. And I said, well, do you think that I need to come home right away and deal with this? Or is this something? She goes, well, I've got something that's catching the water. We'll just need to address it. And she goes, you'll be fine. Go ahead and get your workout and have a good workout. And I'm like, great, thanks. And you know what? I went in and I had a great workout. Now, literally the night before, my iPhone 14 Pro Max was like not charging like it should, and it was really hot to touch. And when I say really hot to touch, I could have fried an egg on it hot to touch.
Yeah, they get hot when they are crashing like that.
Yeah,
they're hot.
And so I did a battery test on it, and it's like, okay, it says your battery is underneath, it's 79% full, and you're under Apple Care for a couple more weeks. I went to the Apple store the night before, had them replace the battery, and I'm fully anticipating and expectant that everything has been solved, except for the fact that overnight it didn't charge anything more than 30%. And when I pulled it off the cradle, I had to touch it just slightly because it would have burned my hand. And so there's a leaking roof, $2,500 deductible. In a season where my income levels were not the greatest, and as a result of the perfect system that I used to create those financial results over the last 6 to 8 months, which is perfectly fine. I know how to tweak things back to the old system that actually does work, and I have been working on that. But anyway, all of this stuff to say that these things would have probably 5-10 years ago definitely would have caused me stress, anxiety, worry, fear, doubt, a kick to the curb of my confidence, my own feeling of worthiness and credibility. I would have been destroyed emotionally as a result of those two things happening concurrently at the same time.
I thought you were going to say like getting kicked in the crotch.
But yeah,
but that's what it could have felt like 5 years ago, right? Could have felt like that.
That's could have felt that way.
Against you. Yeah.
However, I recognize I have a choice to respond. I could have reacted by old programming of what I think and how my habitual ways of doing things were in my mind, or I could respond with how I desire to be. I could choose how I be in the world. And I'm like, okay, well, these are challenges that need solutions. Solutions will be there. These are outside of what I would have desired to spend my time, energy, and effort on for these few days. But the solutions will come. And you know what? I'm going to only ever experience the present moment. So I'm going to enjoy these moments with these challenges. and I chose to enjoy them, and I did. And what I love about that episode, Daphne, is that I recorded that before I knew what the cause of the leak was, whether or not it was going to be a covered expense or not. And in my mind, at the lowest, I'm looking at a $2,500 deductible. And if I could allow myself to see what potentially could be there, this could be an uncovered loss that could be in the thousands at a time where it's like, this is not a good time for this. And yet in the midst of that, before knowing anything, I chose peace. I chose joy. I chose a feeling of anything that is a problem has some sort of solution. This, a couple years from now, this isn't going to be a blip on my radar, right, no matter what it is. And so I just moved forward. By the way, by the end of that day, a guy came, found out it was one nail that had popped out, not covered by insurance, but still, the guy came out and tested it. He's like, listen, I put the nail back in, a new nail in, I filled it up with this thing. It's a lifetime such and such, and I'm not charging you anything for it. So the cost to repair the situation with the roof was $0. And yeah.
And I think the part that I loved about that, which is why it's so valuable, and people have these experiences, but why it's so valuable to share these things is that there was a choice you were making about, and here's the thing, it's sort of layered to me. And in my experience, like there's the choice about how I want to respond to anything in the moment. I think that's one layer. I think as we go deeper, there's the choice of how disturbed do I want to be in this moment? Like how much mental, emotional disturbance do I want to experience in this moment or at all? Or do I want to choose to have some peace and calm and enjoyment? And when you said choose ourselves, that's what next week's episode is going to be about. And so there's these layers that we're doing of choosing, right? Like you get to really choose how upset you want to be in a moment. You get to choose how disturbed you want that being over there as your being, right? You get to choose how much you're going to allow a momentary experience to disturb that being. And I come back to this 1,000 times in my life, that when I'm choosing to have my calm in place, that I always am, when I'm choosing to have my joy in place, which I know I always am, which that's the isness of the whole thing, then I am probably more likely to be helpful and effective to the other beings on the planet as well.
Yeah.
So I love the episode and the idea of choosing.
Well, there are two things that come up for me as you share all of that. Number one, I think it's important to also say that it's possible to choose to be in a positive experience of life, even if it's not a temporary situation. Some people I know are dealing with very chronic or even terminal situations that I have seen and witnessed choose a peaceful, pleasant experience in the midst
100%.
of very real pain.
Yes.
So I think that's an important thing. And then the other thing, I think, just to prep for next week, my thought of choose yourself, the topic is, in my mind, the idea of some people are waiting to be chosen by some gatekeeper about whether or not you have a platform to show up and to be able to communicate your message to the world, or whether or not you have some sort of permission slip to be able to go, who am I to go do this? Somebody else should actually recognize who I am, see the value, and then ask me, choose me to go out and do this and give me their stamp of approval or whatever. And so my idea of choosing yourself is like, no, choose yourself.
Choose it for yourself.
So
or
I'll give you a perfect.
You can wait around for the likes if you want.
The perfect example is the number of people who have come to me and says, Cliff, you are such a gifted communicator and speaker. I first discovered you when you spoke at such and such conference. It's amazing. I have a desire to get into public speaking. What is the first thing that you would recommend that I do so that I would get invited to speak at events? I said, invite yourself to speak at an event that you host. Choose yourself. Invite yourself. If go to your local library, many of them, there's ones that have these free meeting spaces. Come up with a topic, have them put it on the website, go around to all of the Paneras and all the other Starbuckses and put ads out for your free seminar and speak at your own live event. That's how you get started.
Yep. Totally agree.
Choose yourself.
Just do it. Choose yourself.
We don't have to do next week's episode. We've done it. Moving along.
Just did it. That's it. All our episodes are just going to be like a couple sentences.
Let's just do season 2 right here in this one stream.
Well, we are going to do it. We are going to do that as a topic because I have a lot of places we can play. Okay. So, but this episode and coming into season 2, I thought, do we have a theme for season 2? I really don't have a theme for season 2, but I do have a sense that there will be a lot about this. I love the choosing idea. And what does that mean to choose? Because to choose wisely, we do have to be able to say the word no, to choose wisely, right? Or we can just choose haphazardly. So this episode is really going to be about that. And I mentioned one thing right at the opening about it is a learnable skill. It is something that's sort of, it's kind of, it sounds a little dire, but I'm going to say it. It's kind of beaten out of us when we're very little. The ability to say no. We don't have a lot of, and probably for some good reasons. I don't want to, belabor the point on that, but we don't get to own a lot of our no's as we're coming up through the world. We're young. We don't want to hug the grandparent. We don't want to, put our pants on. There's some utility to the things.
Did you have a problem with that as a kid, Daphne? Daphne, put your pants on. No.
I was often naked. I just did not like being clothed. Probably still don't if I really get in touch with it. Anywho, for today I have a shirt on and as far as pants. So, it kind of gets beaten out of us a little bit. And so it's a skill. We have to go back to sort of knowing and life is nuanced and we take on different things and we're not that good at knowing what makes us happy anyway. We have to sort of give ourselves some grace of navigating this crazy thing we call life and how we play this game. Nevertheless, to your point, Cliff, or the story you told at the beginning about, losing your gallbladder, I just love it. I didn't say it enough and I lost my gallbladder. We start to suffer the consequences. And in my work with people who are consistently seem to be chronically overwhelmed, under chronic stress, burned out, all the words that we can use to describe it. In other words, just not enjoying life that much. Like it's just not that fun anymore. People wake up with this sort of, that I've worked with, wake up and self included too. There's one point in my life where I'd wake up and I'm like, is this all there is? Like, this is it. I just am going to do this. And I don't really enjoy doing X, Y, Z. And I've taken on too much. I can't keep up. My calendar's a mess. I don't seem to be effective at anything I'm doing in my life. I'm not doing it well. I'm barely keeping it together. I'm not sleeping well. I'm overeating. I'm not exercising. It goes on and on. My health too was becoming challenged. And you've said this before too, I was over obligated and undercommitted. And that is the experience that I had myself, that I had to work through as well and become masterful at saying no, and that I guide and coach people through. So I think what I got in touch with as I looked at my experience, because I judged myself a lot also. I judged myself so much for not being able to say no, so much for the fear that I would have. And again, I think this is, I'd like to talk about that too, just the fears that we have about saying no, the fear of disappointing people, all the stuff that got layered in there, all the stories I told myself about saying no. And I would judge myself for it pretty harshly. Like, why can't I do this? Why do I keep saying yes? I had this experience. I called it my approval arm. Whenever anybody would ask for something, I think a good project we need to do, up went my arm. Well, it was a compulsion. Right. I'll do it. I got it. I can do it. Pick me. I'll do it. And nothing like, creating the overwhelm for yourself to keep doing that. So I would judge myself pretty harshly. And what I figured out over time, I'm like, oh, look, you're just not that skillful at this yet. You're just not that skillful yet. So I thought it was a worthy topic and for us to get into then not only how we do it, which I'm sure you and I both have a lot of pointers to share, and why. And I think we're building on the why right now. If you want to continue to be overwhelmed, stressed out, not enjoying your life that much, and then out of alignment. And I think that's one of the pieces too, Cliff, that like having that clarity, the more that you can afford or allow yourself to say no, you start getting really clear about, well, what is it? How do I want to be spending this life energy that I've been given?
What I would like to posit the idea, because from my own experience because like I said, I believe I am a master at the art and skill of saying no.
Mm-hmm.
And what led me to that is actually first gaining clarity about what I want my yes to be.
Yeah.
And basically what happened for me every single time when I've come up with a new series of no's, like it's like my to-do list is, okay, I need to say no to this, no to this, no to this, no to this, no to this. It's like my whole to-do list is, these are the things I'm not going to be doing. I like to create not to-do lists.
Yes.
And so every time that is precipitated by, what would life be like if fill in the blank? Man, what would life be like if I would have every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday without scheduled calls? Wow, imagine the ability to go on 4-day weekends with my wife anytime I want without actually rescheduling anything. Or what if on a Friday I want to, instead of working, I want to go to an amusement park and walk around and enjoy the atmosphere of people having such fun in this entertainment place? Or what if I want to go for a hike in the woods on a Monday instead of the old style of thinking about getting back into the grind? What if I want to have the flexibility to only work 3 days a week? Man, what would my life be like if I only scheduled Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for all of my stuff? And then all of a sudden I'm soaking in the visions of what that would be. And it consumes my thoughts. And as I'm going to bed at night, I literally have to distract myself from these visions of only working Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And now all of a sudden it's like, I still have all of these things on my calendars on Mondays and Fridays and all this other stuff. And there's no way to make Wednesday work currently. But man, this vision of what my life could be, what I would want my life to be, the yes, is that everything I do, schedule related, all occurs Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And nothing would, if you were to ask me any Friday, any Monday, what's on your calendar today? Nothing.
And if someone said, I want to meet with you on Friday at noon,
and
you would say?
The answer is absolutely no.
Yes.
No, I will not meet you, but I can meet you on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday at either of these times. Choose which one works best for you. None of those work for me. Sorry to hear that. Reach out to me if that ever changes for you.
Yes. So what I hear, and this is a critical point. There's two ways to get at this to some degree. One is through our suffering, right?
Yep.
And in my experience, for me personally, that was where I started learning to develop the skill. And it sounds like you had a similar experience, right? For however we were doing it, whatever we were believing at the time, whatever the stories are we were telling ourselves that forced you into a space of, overworking and not taking care of yourself and having to go to the hospital, whatever it was that drove me, whatever I was believing around, my own ability to have boundaries or whatever. I mean, it's deep. It's deep. Nevertheless, I got to a point where I was like, okay, this is crazy what I'm doing to myself. Like, what is happening? So at least at that point, I might not have been pulled by a vision just yet entirely, not 100%. I absolutely was pushed by suffering. If I had to weigh it at that moment in my life, I was much more pushed by suffering than I was pulled by vision. Now, in the space that I live now, and I think in the space that you live now, there is a lot more being pulled by a vision.
Yes.
Right. We can think about in a different way. Hey, I want to experience this. I want to have the experience of my life being set up such that I have my days on Mondays and Fridays to myself to do X, Y, Z. And on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, I'm client facing, or however we see it. I'm working on the business. So there's much more of the vision pulling that happens. And there is still a call that to even hold that vision, we must be able to say no.
Yeah.
Right. And so I love the contrast you're putting together, because I think this is really, and I think that's where I had the judgment for myself too, that there was a point where I was like, I know I don't want this. I'm just not clear about them. What do I want? I'm just not there yet, but I know this isn't working.
One of the things that I really love about what you just said is that there's whether you call it suffering or just a complete awareness of a lot of things that you don't want.
Yeah.
The experiencing the pain related to what you don't want is oftentimes, it gives birth to desire. It gives birth to the vision of what you do want. However, what you just said is pretty profound. A lot of people have really, and I used to struggle with this, of just saying, okay, I don't want this, so let me do anything other than this. When anything is an infinite option, and if you have no destination, anywhere you go is perfectly fine. And the reality is that unless we're making consciously aware, intentional choices about what we do want, we're going to end up habitually we may be in a different environment. We may be we may have gotten out of what we wanted to get away with, but what we did, the problem is what we got away from isn't actually the cause of the problem. It's our way of thinking or perceiving and what we're attributing meaning to and how we're being in those scenarios and in those situations. And so what I think is really a powerful portion of learning the skill of saying no is actually saying, let me get very clear of what I do want. What is the yes? What can I have a very clear picture? And we've talked about this before. It's not so much about what am I running away from, but because we all will tend to run away from pain, but what is the joy that is before me? What is the calling and the alignment of what is right and what is good and what is in alignment with who I feel called to be, not who I feel I should be based upon what everybody told me is responsible and right and well received by a large number of people. No, what is aligned for me? Can I get clear on that?
Yes.
And sometimes getting clear on that is the pain of the lack of clarity gives birth to the vision.
Totally. And I think it's I mean, I just can't dismiss any experience I've ever had. I think this is sort of how the irony of the whole thing of overwhelm and burnout really starts to play itself out. Right. It's sort of ironic because without those experiences, I don't know that I would have become incredibly skillful at saying no. I don't know that I would have become incredibly skillful of going, oh, well, what do I want instead then? If this thing isn't working, how would I like to do it? How do I want to play this game? Essentially, it's what I was asking myself, And so that is the sweet irony of it, I think.
It's one of the things I love about the name of our podcast, the ultimate choose your own adventure game. It's like, okay, these up to this point in the story, these are the details that you're aware of. Now, moving forward, you have a choice. Which page do you want to turn to? Do you want to go, if you choose to take the path on the left, turn to page such and such. If you want to choose the path to the right, turn to page such and such. Now, the thing is you have to choose one of those two adventures to go down.
Yeah.
And the question is how much clarity are you randomly picking let's just randomly choose what's behind door number 2 when you have no clue. And oftentimes that's how I choose my own adventure. It was clueless. However, what I've discovered is there's been a lot of explorers that have gone before us in the adventure of life. And so there's a lot more information that's available to help us make wiser decisions as well. And that's why I love the idea of seeking out many advisors and reading the stories of people who have gone before. Not necessarily that what they chose, the results that they got will be predictive of what I'm going to experience. However, there's a lot more that we can perceive what's behind certain different options that we choose in life by exploring what other people have experienced.
Yeah, and you said the key word, which is the wisdom word, right? We get taught a lot of things. I mean, all the stuff we got taught in school and some, very useful, And you can really miss out on like, well, what's the wisdom behind this? What's the wisdom of life? What is it that we're, when we start talking about our well-being and living the life of our dreams, what are we really talking about? And I think, Cliff, this is a place where you and I spend a lot of time. I mean, there's the business, there's, you want to pay the bills. There's the very, what I would call the transactional parts of living, which are very helpful, which also feed into the transformational parts of living too, that wisdom part of it. So this is really what we're talking about in the spirit of saying no in our life. Knowing like, what is me living? What does it look like for me to live this a life of wisdom, this life of play? What does it look like over here on Planet Daphne? And then you've got over there on Planet Cliff. And we can learn from people that did walk this path before us a little bit, right? Like maybe it's wise to take a minute and think about what you really want. Maybe it's wise to, all signs point to yes in a lot of these ways. What does that really look like to be tapping into our inner wisdom and our inner knowing? And once we can do that, I think that's where the gift of saying no, which means, by the way, that when I say no to something, I'm also saying yes to something else. I may not be 100% clear what I'm saying yes to, but I'm saying yes to something else. So they become two sides of the same coin.
And I think it's very important to have just as much awareness of that statement. There, by the way, I encourage people to write down the statement. Every time I say no to something, I'm saying yes to something. That would be an incredibly powerful statement to meditate upon.
Yeah, maybe I should meditate on it.
The other thing that I would do is write the inverse. Every time you say yes to something, you are saying no to something. And see, the thing is a lot more people have experience with saying yes. So look at all of the things in your life that you've currently said yes to. And as a result of those yeses, what have you had to say no to?
Okay. I want to grab this. This is so critical because, we do think about it in terms of, I think, things in our life, like stuff on my calendar or tasks that I've agreed to do. I want to come back to your iPhone roof story for a second, because one of the things you said yes to was calm and peace. When I say no to that, when I say yes to anger, when I say yes to frustration, when I say yes to yelling, screaming, pitching a tantrum, whatever, how extreme you want to get, I'm saying no to my own peace and calm. I'm probably saying no to maintaining healthy relationships. So that's why I said it gets pretty deep, right? I mean, there's the stuff of our calendar, there's the stuff of our life, there's the way we're filling in the blanks of what we're doing, and then there's the parts of our being. We're back to this transactional, transformational space.
Yeah. I love that. When I think about that, if I would have said no, or if I would have said yes to anger, frustration, anxiety, and worry, I would have said the things that I would have said no to are, I'm going to say no to being in a pleasant, undistracted mood during the Next Level Mastermind group, where people have paid thousands of dollars to be in this experience. And here I am, distracted, worried, anxious, and a little bit angry, and my mind's not completely here. I would have said no to absolute empathetic listening to what's going on in this person's life, hearing what's not being said. I would have said no to showing up with the greatest gifts that I have to be of value and service at the highest level to these people who have entrusted into the environments that I've created. I would have said no to that if I would have said yes to the anger and the frustration. And so instead, I said no to the anger and the frustration and the anxiety and the worry. I said no to those. And when I said no to those, I said yes to all of those other things that I wanted to be in this world to provide.
Yeah. And your day was probably more enjoyable.
It was. It was. And what I loved about it, this is the thing that I love. Daphne, if you ever ask me, hey, Cliff, how's it going? Almost always I say,
yeah, it's never been better.
And it gets better every minute of the day.
Yes.
I almost always say that. And that morning, jumped on the Next Level Mastermind call. This is just hours after I learned that the water's leaking and iPhone's burning. The very first person, like, hey Cliff, how's it going? I've never been better, and it gets better every minute of the day. And my win of the week this week is that my roof is leaking and my iPhone's on fire almost. And let me explain to you why it's my win of the week. It's my win of the week because in the midst of these two things, I feel great.
Yeah.
And I can authentically, transparently, non-Pollyanna-shieldly say, I've never been better, and it gets better every minute of the day.
And it does. And didn't you love, well, I want to ask, did you love when you, I'll say when you're first learning to say no to things like that, like let's talk about anger and frustration. And then we're going to talk about learning to say no, what happens. Because I had this other experience I want to share, but about people asking me for stuff, asking me to do stuff. We'll come back to that. But did you enjoy when you made that choice and you said yes to the calm and you said no to the anger and frustration and the worry? Did you love afterwards reflecting on that and realizing, oh, no, I was totally fine. Like those experiences, the roof was leaking regardless, right? The roof was leaking either way, no matter what I chose. It did not change the reality that the roof was leaking.
Yeah.
Therefore, I can choose to be calm and joyful. And it did not impact that experience, or excuse me, it did change the experience, but it did not impact that reality.
Yes, I loved that. I loved the fact that coming so far into this journey, that in that moment, I recognized that I'm still experiencing the only thing I've ever experienced in life, and that is the present moment.
Yeah.
And that yes. I loved the awareness that there is nothing going on in this present moment that could rob me of my joy unless I choose to allow it to do so.
Yeah. And the roof's going to leak either way.
The roof would leak either way. And the thing is that now in my case, it turned out to be a simple solution. Didn't even cost me a penny. This guy spent 2 hours at my house and didn't charge me anything. I mean,
wow.
Come on. But did that add to my joy? It added to my appreciation, but it did not add to my joy. There's a difference. My joy was my joy.
Yes.
But man, was there an additional thing to pile on for what I have to be grateful for? Yes, but it did not add to my joy.
Well, that could be a whole nother episode where we talk about happenings and how we feel dependent on the happenings for happiness.
Yeah.
We could do a whole episode on that. And that's why I said at the beginning, I said, it's a little tricky at first for us to know, quote, what makes us happy, because when we're dependent on external circumstances, good luck. Because I don't know if you've noticed or not, but roofs tend to leak. Well, here's the thing.
Here's what I will say. Everything in material existence will one day go away.
100%.
We live, everything is
called entropy.
Yeah, it is all decaying. It's all here today, gone tomorrow. The question is like, Alan Watts hit me upside the head with a 2x4 one morning. Yeah. I was at the gym, and he talked about the fact that we sometimes in the spring the trees start leaving.
Yeah,
is what he called it. They start leaving, and so all of a sudden the branches start to sprout these leaves, and then in the fall they start, unleaving. They start falling. The leaves fall to the ground, and those leaves go in. They fertilize the soil, which basically gives nutrients into the tree, and it leaves again. And so what I loved about it is and why can't we understand that the earth is like a tree in this metaphor, and the earth keeps peopling?
Yeah. Yes.
We as people are like leaves on a tree during the season of spring and the summer and fall. And we're here for a season, and then we're going to go back into the nutrients that will fertilize for the next wave of life.
Yeah. It's a beautiful realization. I mean, we've talked about this, I think, on the show too, in season 1. I'm sure I brought it up because, it's just something that's ever present for me, which is just death.
Yes.
and you could become nihilistic about it. That's one position to take. However, I think if you really, my experience when I really got that my consciousness shifted around the level of gratitude and appreciation that I get to do anything, that I'm here at all.
Yeah.
So, when we can get in touch with that in a very heartfelt way, I think that opens us to go, wow, I'm shocked that I'm even here. What a gift that this has become, that I even get to do anything ever. And we can live in that space.
So Daphne, what are some of the things that you have most found a challenge in saying no to?
Yeah.
And then what actions did you take to discover how to say no to them and overcome the challenges and obstacles of doing that?
Yeah, the biggest one was disappointing people, losing approval, letting someone down, not being available. It was this sort of amalgamated sort of, ball of twine. It all lived in this bucket of probably being the people pleaser in a lot of ways. And there was just this strange experience I had, the strange projection that I had gotten in touch with, which was when someone would ask me for something, I would get so agitated. I noticed this experience. Like no, I don't want to come to the birthday party. No, I don't want to, I don't want to be in this meeting. I don't want to go to this thing on Friday, but okay, and why are they asking? And I noticed that due to my inability to say no, I also didn't like hearing no. I didn't like hearing no from other people. So it was this sort of, and probably I should say this a different way. I didn't like it when someone would tell me no, and then I was incapable of saying it because it was the same mirror, if you will, that was happening. I hope that I'm making sense.
Yeah, you didn't like to be told no, and so therefore you felt guilty in giving other people a disappointing response.
Yes, because I was so incapable of saying it at all. It was on me. I was projecting that out. And so what I got in touch with was, well, of course people are going to ask for things. When I really got in touch, I'm like, I ask for things all the time, right? Whether I was consciously aware of it or not, I was asking people for things.
We're asking for people's attention to hear us have a conversation right now.
Exactly. I mean, it just, again, goes layers and layers deep, right? I was asking for people to be on time for things. I was requesting that people do their jobs. At the time I was leading teams. I was all kinds of things that I was requesting from people. And once I realized, I was like, oh, of course, this is just part of being human. Of course, people are going to ask me for things. Of course, this isn't personal. They're not monsters. And I'm not a monster either. Again, this is where the self-judgment and self-criticism came from.
Yeah.
I'm not a monster for asking for things. And one of the things that I would ask for from people would be I would want space. I would want my own time. I would want my own moment, to be with myself. So I wasn't a monster for asking for that either. And once I got in touch with that, it was really helpful. I was like, oh, this is just the isness of it. People are going to be asking for things all the time. People are going to need things. They're going to make requests. This isn't personal. And I think, again, this is going to fill in very nicely for next week's episodes. But when I realized, oh, this isn't personal, like my life can be exactly how I want it to be. I can really choose myself. Then the word no started to become a little bit easier. And that I could say it in a way, and I call it sort of having a savoir-faire about things. I could say it in a way that didn't make me look like a jerk. I think this was the second part of it. I think this was for me that held me back from saying no. I didn't want people to think I was a jerk. Like, no, I don't want to come to your 1-year-old birthday party. I love you and your kid, but I really don't. This isn't where I want to spend my time. It's not not personal. So I think there was a way that I also was learning how to say no that felt clear and also felt caring and loving. The truth is, what I really got into as well is I don't think at least for me, and you can tell me if this is true for you, I don't want someone saying yes to me when they really have a no. Like that's sort of like, I just wouldn't want that. So I got in touch with that. That was probably the third layer of it, is like, I didn't want people doing that with me. So why would I be doing that with other people? And I would ask people, how do you feel about if I say no? Well, I'm a little disappointed, but I wouldn't want you to do something you don't want to do. Almost everyone would say that. I don't want you doing something you don't want to do.
I love the statement that you just said that they would respond. How do you feel about that? Well, I'm a little disappointed. Yeah. Notice that language. I'm a little disappointed. Now, did you do that? Or did they
No.
do that? They did that. So
100%.
one of the things that it's like, as soon as I heard it, I wrote down here. Number one, I am a former people pleaser. I'm a recovered people pleaser. The only thing is though, is there is no such thing. There has never been a thing called people pleasing.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing I can do. This is a firm belief that I have currently. There is nothing that I can do to please you, and there is nothing that I can do to disappoint you.
This is true.
Those are only things you can do inside of yourself based upon your expectations and how those expectations are either met or not met, and the choice that you make about the feelings that you get based upon the results of what your expectations were. So
and let me add to that. And we learned that we learned that very early on, right? Like this is sort of the being the kid. I mean, it is being the kid.
I did not learn this early on.
What you learned the pattern of that you were responsible for someone else's happiness.
That's what I learned. I was conditioned from an early. This is for me. What I'm saying here, the idea that I could please others and that I could disappoint others.
Yeah.
This is something that is a new revelation to me within the last 10, 15. I'm going to be 52 years old in January. It's only in the last 5 to 6 or 7 years that I learned that I have never had any impact on disappointing someone, and I have never had any impact at all in pleasing someone.
Yeah.
There's only other people's expectations of what they think that I should do. They think that I should say. They feel about how I should be, and it's only their my being, what my just isness of who I am and what I've done. I'm me. But whether they're pleased or disappointed I have nothing to do with that.
No, you don't. Especially in our adult life. I mean, I think that's the point. I wanted to give breath to why, where did that come from then? Like, where did I ever get this idea? I'm like, well, probably when you were 3. This understanding just sort of the psychology of a kid. And then we just bring that into our quote adult life.
So I am studying something. Have you ever heard of a guy named Chase Hughes, by the way? I've just been introduced to him. He's a guy who trains secret agent operatives around the world. I don't know anything about Chase Hughes other than a friend of mine introduced me to this thing, and there's this ops manual, and he teaches how to persuade people. So it's this fascinating stuff. But one of the things he talks about is the different layers of our brain, and there's the ancestral DNA encoded stuff. And so some of this stuff isn't when we're 3. It's the thing is back in our times of tribal nature, if we did not go along with the tribe, then we died.
Yeah.
Everything was life and or death, and so there's a lot in our DNA that says we should do what we believe will be pleasing and acceptable. Because and the thing is it's our perception that we're pleasing or displeasing. The thing is that's always still, even back then, was on them. But whether or not can we do things that meet their expectations, which then they choose to be pleasing? And can we avoid things can I avoid the things that would go against what they expect of me? Yeah. And then that would keep them from being displeased and outcasting me from the tribe.
Well, and what I love is what you just said that I love is and who knows what their whatever your tribe's expectations were, because back to my story, I'm like, well, would you want me to say yes to you if I really had a no? Everyone's like, no. And I'm like, well, that's not what I was telling myself.
Well, here's the thing though. There was a time the answer is yes, I want compliance no matter what.
Probably.
And so what I'm getting at is it's in answer to the question, where does this come from?
Yeah.
I from what I've been studying, we literally have impulses that are not conscious choices. They are DNA encoded responses and reactions to stimuli. And this DNA response says, stay in alignment with the expectations of others. And some of the expectations of others, I don't care what you want. I don't care how much of a no. I don't care how over-obligated. I don't care how overwhelmed you are. I want you to say yes. And if you don't say yes, you're outside of the tribe and you will die.
And put your pants on.
And put your pants on, for goodness sake.
That's what I'm out of the tribe.
You're out of the tribe.
Hey, you see that everybody else has their pants on? No, I think that's a great point. That is a great point. That there is so much in our DNA that drives a lot of this too, right? Being part of the tribe. Very well stated and great point. Okay, so where was I? So, learning this sort of how to navigate this, how to say no, how to say it in a way that, I brought up the savoir-faire sort of approach, that I could say it and be clear. And this is what the skill that I really wanted to impart here is, first of all, give yourself some grace. If you're not a person who has been saying no very often, I like to say this: have a very quick no and a very slow yes. What I learned was that I had to, and I know you have something with this that I wanted you to bring up with your children. I had to get to a point where I was like, look, because my compulsion, because of my we'll call it people pleasing, whatever it was, my compulsion was to say yes all the time. I'm like, okay, flip the script on yourself. Instead of doing that, start saying no all the time. And I had to feel a little bit, I think this was some of too, and I don't know how this lived for you, but I didn't want to feel my own disappointment and sadness of missing, quote, missing out on something, or not being able to participate in something. I noticed I had that too. So I also had a compulsion around saying yes, because I just never wanted to feel my own, I'm going to use the word disappointment, and that might be that word doesn't quite grab it, but I had to feel my own sort of like, oh yeah, I just can't be there. Like, I know I don't even want to be there, but even knowing that I don't want to be at the thing, or I don't want to do the thing, I notice I have a little sadness about it.
Yeah.
Like, so there was something in there that I had to get in touch with. Nevertheless, I allowed myself to start just saying no very quickly, and just everything became a no. And then I got to then I could, and this is what was so great. I could say no. And if I changed my mind in 48 hours about something, I would go back and revisit it. And what I learned was that I could do that. And often doors were still open, not always, but often they were, to different things or different people or whatever the situation was calling for at the time. And so I allowed myself to have a very slow yes. Like, let me think about that for a second. I have a no to it right now, but let me take some time to think through this. And that was very helpful. So a quick no and a slow yes.
Yeah.
Was what I learned.
Well, the thing that you wanted me to pull out is probably the fact that all of my kids are conditioned to know that every time they ask me for anything, it's almost a guarantee that the answer is going to be no. There's very few exceptions to this rule. So it could be anything. Hey, Dad, do you guys want to play a game tonight for family game night, or do you guys want to have a family game night this Friday night? No, I don't. And the truth is that I don't at that moment, because prior to the request, I had already been in a pretty great mood. I already have expectations of what is, I just have
that wasn't even on your radar.
What is currently planned and or unplanned seems pleasant to me.
Yeah.
Any deviation from the plan is immediately changing some shift into what I've currently came to a level of comfort with. And so the answer, do I want to have some unexpected commitment that I currently haven't committed to? The answer is no, I don't want to change my plans. And I'm being super facetious with such an simply obvious, of course it's going to ultimately be a yes, but the answer is immediately no, I don't want to.
Yes.
And I said, and then but tell me why you want to, and tell me what's going on here. Convince me of why this might possibly be a yes, and all this other stuff. Make a case for it. Now, again, I say a yes to a lot of family game nights,
of course,
and many times I even want to, but I still joke because it's just a joke in our family now that if you ask me something, the answer is no. But when it's something like, hey, Dad, can I borrow some money? Or, hey, Dad, can we go to this event? Or can we go take a vacation here? The answer is no. But then I say, but work for it. Convince me. Sell me on this idea. See if you can win me over as to why this should be a yes. And it becomes a game with our family. And so that's why I start off with something as simple as, do you want to have a family game night this Friday night? And the answer is no. And it's like, it's not that I don't prioritize family and I don't enjoy game nights. It's just like, wasn't current plan. And this is new. And instantly it doesn't jump out to me as like, oh my gosh, you guys, let's have a game. Tell me why, and for me, it's more of that game. It's just like, let's have, I want to train my kids to have the ability to say no.
Yes.
Because also, all of this skillful saying no stuff for me, the skillful saying no stuff has happened for, I'd say, about 2 decades now. When I said no to the insurance career to go and leave that, that's when it really started to kick off in a big way.
Yeah.
And maybe even a little bit earlier than that. However, for much of my kids' earlier life, they saw the other version of me that said yes to everything. And it's those things that they picked up in those younger years that they're still struggling with today. So, for example, I'm not going to name any names, but a member of my family said, hey, I'd love to come and do that with you guys, except for I've already said yes to going to lunch with so-and-so, and then I said yes to going out and doing this with so-and-so, and because of that, I have to go do these things, and I can't say no to her. Even though I've already had lunch, I'm going to go and sit, and even though I've already gone shopping, I'm going to go there with it, even though I don't want to do this, but and it's like, you do not have to go do those things.
Yeah. And you could see it, right?
I could see it. And this person who
will remain nameless.
There's only 2 of them it could be now. But anyway, they're on the borderline of awareness, but still with this belief that the well-being of the other individual in the story is dependent upon my child. And I'm like, this is not how that works.
Yeah, it's not. And again, you keep modeling. What I hear is that you want to keep modeling this ability. And I imagine them, what I appreciate about that so much, and just learning that for myself too, is it just gives space. It gives space as you're learning to say no. It gives some space to like, okay, let me just get comfortable with. And I don't know if this was true for you either, but even when I was first learning this, I'm like, okay, I need to get comfortable. And this isn't so much true now, but I need to get comfortable with the discomfort of saying no, because I hadn't given myself the ability to say it, right? It felt awkward. It felt weird to truly say no. It just felt weird. And I think this was the other thing I had to learn too. I'm like, okay, you're going to feel a little weird. It's going to feel uncomfortable. And people may have a reaction. They may have a reaction. It's okay. It has nothing to do with you. None of this is personal. Just stick with it. Remember what you're up to. And so it took some time. And
for me, what I would say is that how much time that takes depends on how much time it takes for you to recognize what your associations are, the meaning that you're giving to you saying no, and your awareness of your ability to be aware of that association of the meaning that triggers that feeling. And also how long it takes for you to learn the skill of changing the neuroassociation such that, wow, I'm aware that I want to say no, but I'm feeling a deep level of anxiety about how they will respond, what they will think of me. I'm feeling some level of guilt because previously I've indicated my interest, but now I've lost it. So and as a result of this, as I want to say no, I'm recognizing all sorts of these negative feelings popping up.
Yep.
However, here's what I know to be true. Here's what I know to be. When I did previously express interest, it was genuine, but this is what's come up for me since. Is it essential that I communicate this to the other person? Would it be of any benefit? I don't think so. So I don't think I need to explain myself and to why I've changed my mind and why I'm actually going to say no. And then the question is Do I have any control over what they think about me as a result of me saying no? They're going to choose. And the thing is if they jump to some negative conclusion, do they truly know me? Do they truly care me? What is the level of our relationship? What is all this stuff? And I could sit there and go through this, and I could actually go from I'm feeling really bad about saying this no to understanding like, listen, my answer is no. I could choose to feel bad about it. Or I could choose to feel peace in the moment, recognizing that whatever happens, and I will navigate the adventure of life, exactly. No matter what this path of me saying no chooses. So I'm going to say no in either way.
Either way.
And it doesn't matter to me if it's $2,500 deductible or if it's $7,000 to replace a roof because it's not covered, or it doesn't matter if, oh, wow, I worried and was anxious and for nothing and it didn't cost me anything in my saying no.
And, I love what you just said. People judge me. They might. And, I also, it's really wonderful when you get into relationship with someone and with people who really are willing to hear a no.
Yes.
So I had mentioned at the top of the show, this episode came out of a story from my life recently, by the way. And that story was, we had someone that was going to come visit. We had people at the house here visiting for the summer. I spend the summers in Michigan. It's beautiful here, right by the lake. And I just didn't feel like having any more people at the house. We had done that for several weeks in a row. We'd gone on a wonderful family vacation. So for about 3 weeks in a row, really had people in our space and we're spending a lot of time with people. And I knew this date was coming up. And I just called my friend and said, look, I know that you were going to come visit. We had made plans for you to come visit in a couple of weeks. And I really have a no and am requiring some space. And she said, that's great. No problem. I said, and, I'm open to discussing this. And, maybe when we're back at our other house in Oklahoma, I'm open to having you come there. She's like, that'd be awesome. Either way, however it works out.
Yes.
And that's the beauty. I think that's the beauty and the freedom, right? And to take care of myself and to know that, boy, I could she have come here? Yeah. Well, what would that experience be like for me?
This is something that I love. I find that life is more interesting spending time with people who are more intentional about their yeses and their nos. Mm-hmm. And those people who are in that space tend to be more open to your yeses and your nos of intentionality. Yes. And there's such a higher level of consciousness and respect around that. And what I'm saying here, what I think is coming up for me is a message of this idea is that learning the skill of saying no is a process of raising your level of consciousness that will cause you to be in resonance with people who have experience of more joy, more margin, more grace, more love, more unconditional experiences with one another that they fully accept. It's like, hey, your no is your no. I don't need an example. I don't need an explanation.
Yeah, and I really didn't give her one other than I just noticed I want more space right now. Now's not a good time, and it was easy. Yeah. It was easy, and not easy simply because she was. Again, my response wasn't going to be dependent on whether she was going to be upset or not. What was just wonderful was seeing how that played out, and I'm like, oh, this is probably, and we've known each other for a couple of years, but it's like, oh, okay, this is that resonance is there. Yeah. Now I get it. Now I know why we're hanging out with each other, at an even deeper level.
Given this conversation, there's something that comes up for me, Daphne, and that is that I feel it's like, and you were saying this many times in the past, and I'm just now coming to the realization of how much of a journey this was, because it wasn't an overnight thing. Mm-hmm. The thing is understand that if you are saying no and it is a challenge, give yourself grace for that, and just evaluate, become aware of why am I having such a hard time with this no. And the reality is that there have been a number of times, even in the past several years, where people have said their no's to me, and I was not very accepting of that no. I was like, wow, this. Yeah, and so what it is every time there is that resistance to either saying or receiving a no, it's an opportunity opportunity to evaluate what are the meanings, what are the associations, what is it, and why am I actually choosing something other than peace and joy in the giving or the receiving of a no. And I believe every opportunity to receive or give a no is an opportunity for further enlightenment.
100%. I totally agree. There's one other thing I want to add to the show. I would actually really like to end with that. There's one part of this skill that I think is important. So I just want to get this part. Let's do this. The other part of this, when you're learning to say no, and this is probably the other trickiest part, please be, and I like to say this, please be a murderer of hope.
I love that language.
So dire. Leave no door open.
Yeah.
And I would notice, I would be saying no, kind of like, well, I don't think I can really make it. I'll see, I guess if I kind of move this other thing. I have a really good example. I was asked to go to this one meeting, and I went to my boss, by the way. And I said, I really don't think I'm going to be able to make it. My calendar's really full. And he's like, oh, okay, well, yeah. And, we can probably just, log you in or something. I don't know, try to meet remotely. And I'm like, yeah, well, I guess if I move this one thing on Friday, I guess I could be there. And he's like, oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So, murder any hope of anything in the future. Just the answer is no.
Yeah.
And just leave it.
And there's something that goes with that as well. Not right now is not a no.
Yeah, right. It's leaves it open a little bit, doesn't it?
Well, the thing is like, hey, you know what? Thank you so much. I'm not currently available due to my current commitments. Oh, great. I'll reach out to you in a couple weeks. I'm like, no. Okay, let me revise my statement.
Not ever available. Yeah.
In this current physical manifestation, I do not want to do that.
Exactly. I do not want to. So the last thing is I think for me on this topic is be clear, leave no door open. And then the last part of like why we talked about overwhelm and burnout at the top, like why do we want to be able to do this? And the other thing I wanted to add, it just as an anchor as to the why, is we can't truly get to our yes in our life, to that vision, to that yes, that we have having a whole body yes, when we can't first own our no.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other real call. When I watch, and I know you work with entrepreneurs all the time who are wanting to set up this new vision for themselves, right? And I know that I've been listening to some of your other podcast episodes, and they're so great about these challenges that entrepreneurs can have. And so much of it is baked in, right? Like the invite you were talking about, like invite yourself.
Yep.
Well, there's a baked in sort of like, well, no, I can't do that. Right. And so it's baked in there. And so just being able to have a little bit more of a no to beliefs that are no longer serving to us, a no to the things that where we don't want to spend our time, can allow us to start to really get to the yes and have a whole body yes. And that is just a wonderful experience. Do you want to be here today? Yes. Did you want to do the podcast? Yes. Like it's visceral.
Yeah.
And that's a very different experience.
I love that. So go and say no. That's the message of this episode. Go and say no.
Yep. And like I say, get out there and screw it up.
Exactly.
Make people real disappointed.
Hey, if you had the power to do so, you go ahead and try. You may find anecdotal evidence to support your belief, not fact, that you could do so, but
so true.
As long as you want to believe that, feel free.
Yeah.
Daphne, what is your call to action?
Yeah, call to action for today. I would love, if for those that are interested, invite those who are interested to join me over on Substack, DS Leadership Life. I am writing every other week. I'm doing a little bit more longer form essays. There is going to be an essay that's going to come out in 2 weeks, not this Wednesday, every other Wednesday I'm posting. And on this very topic, by the way, that I've been working on about how I love to say no, but I haven't always. So you'll get some little other additional insights from today's show, but I'd love to have people join me there, DS Leadership Life over on Substack. Every other week I post a longer form essay on some topic of life and, how we garner our wisdom and working in leadership and, being a person who's working for somebody else. There's a lot of that threaded in there. So join me there.
I love it. My call to action this week is for those of you who are on an entrepreneurial, adventurous journey through life. Whether you're aspiring to start your own business, you are in the early stages of it, or you're full-time self-employed. At any level of your entrepreneurial journey, if you are not experiencing the fulfillment, the joy and abundance and profitability that you desire, I can tell you right now, there are so many things I've learned throughout my lifetime and my own entrepreneurial journey that most people struggle with. Just some of the small things. They are major obstacles that stand in your way, but if you could just see how easy a solution could be, it's just a single conversation. And oftentimes I like to provide these either through one-on-one coaching, but more than lately, I've actually been doing a group coaching program called the Next Level Coaching Program. You may have heard me talk about it in the past. It was for the art and business of coaching. I've expanded it beyond the scope of coaching because what I recognize is not everybody on an entrepreneurial journey wants to be a coach. And so it is all things online business, all things entrepreneurial journey, including coaching, but all the other things of business, product, services. If you are out there on an entrepreneurial journey and you find yourself struggling to live the fulfilling business life that you've desired, then I encourage you to reach out to me, Cliff at cliffravenscraft.com, and ask me about my group coaching program. It is the most amount of access for the lowest amount of money, and every single week guaranteed to give you insights, strategies, techniques, frameworks, and mindset shifts that will propel you 10, 15 years further in your journey than before you started that call.
I love it.
There you go.
Just do it.
Just do it. And next week, we're going to talk about choose yourself.
Choose yourself. Oh, that's going to be a good one.
And until next time, we encourage you to say no to others and choose your own adventure. Bye.